Welcome. Thank you for watching this teaching video from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. Please check out our other videos and don't forget to like and subscribe. Our mission is to help people come to know Jesus better and love Him more every day. We believe this will not only help our own spiritual growth, but also help us better influence the community and the world for Christ. For more information about Oak Tree, please visit us at oaktreechurch.com. There you'll find past message series, online giving options, and more information about our discipleship process that we call The Path. Now enjoy this message. We'd love to hear from you in the comments or the website contact form. Thank you.
We are beginning a new study today for the next few weeks. This will take us through Labor Day weekend. Okay, so we've got about 6-7 weeks here, 6 weeks actually, including today, and we are going to be working through the outline of the Gospel of John. Okay, the outline of the Gospel of John, and we're calling it signs because John wrote these are the signs that Jesus did. Now, let me show you, and I'm going to do this two different ways, okay? This is going to seem really weird because of the way we do our slides and everything here. There's my mouse. I'm going to put this up on the left side in the text as well, but I'm also putting it on the slide itself. And the reason for that is because we put the slides in PDF on our website, and I want to make sure this one is actually on a slide, not just on the text on the side where we read it. There are some books of the Bible that make it really, really easy to figure out what is their theme, how they are structured, where is their outline, and some of them are so easy, and it's great from a Bible study perspective. Some of them are just a royal pain, honestly. Some of them, there are certain books of the Bible that when I get ready to teach them or I get ready to study them, it's not a sense of dread necessarily, but it's like this, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no thought flow. Some of you would love it because you just jump all over the place and you follow it great. I'm looking for a plan. I'm looking for something that walks us through. It's one of the reasons, and I know some of you are going to hate me for this, but deal with it. This is one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of the book of James. Okay, I know some of you love James, and there's really, really good stuff in James. Okay, I'm not dissing James or anything, but James has absolutely no flow. Okay, you cannot outline the book of James. I mean, you can, but there's going to be 17 points and no sub-points because he just jumps from one to the next thing. Sometimes he'll loop back and he'll tie something together, but it just jumps. James has been compared to the book of Proverbs, which is another one I'm not a big fan of, not because there's not good stuff in there, but because the writer, usually Solomon, sometimes some other guys, he'll change thoughts in the middle of a verse. They're just like, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say something that is completely, somewhere else. And I'm like, that is not how I work, right? That is not how I think. I wrote my chapter-by-chapter commentaries, and I'm working through Proverbs like there is no theme to this chapter. There's no theme to this verse. There's just like, it was so very difficult. Fortunately, we have books like Acts. We have books like John. We have books like 1 John. There are books that actually give us the theme, give us the outline right in the text. Okay? Now, Acts puts it right up front. In fact, I can scroll to it here because we're so close. It's the book right after John. So let me scroll over here to Acts chapter 1, verse 8. Jesus said to the 11 apostles, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea and Samaria, and the farthest parts of the earth. And if you actually work your way through the book of Acts, that is the outline. They start in Jerusalem, they move to Judea, Samaria, and then they move to the rest of the world. It's a great outline for the book of Acts, and you can follow through. John chapter 20. John chapter 20. Not 2. That's where we'll be in just a moment. John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31 give us the outline, give us the theme, give us the purpose even of this fourth gospel. This was the last one of the four gospels written. Matthew was written, I believe, first. A lot of people want to say Mark was written first. I don't think there are good reasons for that. I think it's better to see that Matthew was written first. We have Mark and Luke later. And John was written possibly 30 years after Matthew, Mark, and Luke. 30 years or more. Okay, much, much later. The Gospels had already been out there. Lots of people knew the story of Jesus, knew what he had done, knew what he had taught, Paul had written already by this point. Paul and Peter and most of the other apostles were already killed by this point. And John said, I need to write another one. Why, John? Why do you need to write another one? Well, Matthew was writing for this specific group with this specific purpose. Mark wrote for this group with this purpose. Luke wrote for this group with this purpose, but nobody has written the account of Jesus for the unsaved world. Nobody has written the account of Jesus specifically so that people could come to faith in Jesus globally. And John said, that's what I'm going to do. So at the very end of the book, almost all the way to the end, the last 2 verses of the second to the last chapter, John added this little bit of information. Now, Jesus performed many other miraculous signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not recorded in this book. That by itself is not helpful. By itself, that's like, well, why didn't you write those down? Those would have been some cool ones that we want to know. Okay, most of the things that John wrote are not included in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So we already have a little bit of a difference. But why didn't, some of our favorite miracles and our favorite teachings, about Jesus, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John, why didn't you include those? Verse 31. But these are recorded so that, here's the theme of the whole book. Why did John write? Why did John choose to write what he wrote? These are recorded so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the one appointed to save the world, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. That's why John wrote this gospel. These, notice, not these teachings of Jesus. Notice it's not these I am statements. This is one of the great ways that people like to study the Gospel of John is Jesus gives 7 I am statements, really, really big statements, and some of them are attached to the signs, but some of them are not. I am the door. I am the shepherd. I am the vine and you are the branches. I am the resurrection and the life. All of these great I am. Who is Jesus? This is from Jesus' own mouth. This is who I am. But John didn't say I wrote those down. He said I recorded these signs. These signs. This is what the book is about. And so this is what we are going to follow through and study over the next several weeks together. John, it's really interesting that John never used the normal word for miracle. John does not call these miracles. Matthew, Mark, and Luke call them miracles. John calls them signs because it's never about the miracle. The miracle never stands on its own. They were miracles, as we will see. But John said it's not about the fact. It's not about the thing. It's not about the event. It's that event or that thing that Jesus did pointed somewhere else. It's a sign. It's a signpost pointing somewhere else. So in this study, over the next few weeks, I don't want to get caught up so much in the what he did as much as in the why he did it, okay? Because it's not about the thing. Of course, mean, the miracle, the sign is fun, and that's fine. But that's they never stood on their own. Jesus never did these miracles just because he was bored. Okay, he never did these things because he didn't have anything else to do that day. Okay, he did them all for a reason, and so John called them signs. Never uses the word, the normal word for miracle in his gospel, but he uses the word sign 17 times. Now, there are only 7 of these signs. We're going to do this in 6 weeks, so 2 of them will combine together because they happened back to back in chapter 6. We'll do that in a couple of weeks. Today, we're going to be in chapter 2, so if you want to scroll there or tap there or turn there or whatever you're going to do. The 7 signs, this is our outline for the series. Okay, today in chapter 2, Jesus is going to turn wine. Nope. Wow. See, it's not even just today, it's been a whole week. Wow, how did I let that one happen? All right. It was water into wine. Okay, everything else in my notes says water into wine. I know it's water into wine. I was obviously not thinking properly. Wine into water is still a miracle, but it's not nearly as exciting. Okay? Wow. I'll correct that before we put the PDF out on the website, okay? Are all the rest of them right? The official sign, the man feeding 5,000, walking on the water, the blind man raising light. Okay, I think the rest of them are right. So in John chapter 4, he healed the son of an official, okay, not a royal official necessarily, but a nobleman. Some translations call him a nobleman's son. In chapter 5, he healed a lame man, which was really cool, and we'll have to get into some textual issues there in a couple of weeks. In chapter 6, he fed the 5,000 men, plus women and children, so probably in the neighborhood of 15,000 to 20,000 people, miraculously, of course. These are all miracles, but they're not just miracles, they're signs. Okay, and that's what I want us to keep in mind. He fed these 15,000, 20,000 people, whatever. Then he sent them away, and then he walked on the water. 2 back-to-back in chapter 6, and we'll put those together because Jesus puts those together. They actually work together, okay? So I don't want to split those apart. In chapter 9, one of my favorites, by the way, actually in John chapter 9, really excited about that one. He heals a blind man, okay? And then in chapter 11, he raised Lazarus from the dead. Now, there's actually one more in the Gospel of John. It actually shows up in all 4 Gospels, one big miraculous event. Any takers? The resurrection itself, yes, the resurrection itself. We're not including that in the study because it's not one of the signs that John recorded specifically to point to something else. It is a miracle, of course. It does point to his deity. But all these other things he did, we're told, in the presence of the disciples. He did them as they were watching. He did them as they were there. Okay? The resurrection is not one of those. The resurrection, nobody was there. He showed up later. He showed himself to the disciples and to other people, but he did not do it in the presence of. Okay? And so I'm not saying it's not miraculous. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying for our study, we're not including that as one of the 7 signs in John. Okay? So, still says wine to water. Did not miraculously fix itself. Okay? So, John chapter 2. Let me read through. It's a short passage, verses 1 through 11. And then we'll ask some questions. Now, verse 1, on the 3rd day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no wine left." Jesus replied, "Woman, why are you saying this to me? My time has not yet come." His mother told the servants, "Whatever he tells you, do it." There's a whole sermon right there. Verse 6, now, there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish ceremonial washing, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus told the servants, "Fill the water jars with water." So they filled them up to the very top. Then he told them, "Now, draw some out and take it to the head steward," and they did. When the head steward tasted the water that had been turned to wine, not knowing where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, he called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the cheaper wine when the guests are drunk. You've kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this as the first of his miraculous signs in Cana of Galilee. In this way, he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Oops. So that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. It never shows up in Matthew, Mark, Luke. We don't have any other detail. We have 11 verses and our imagination. That's all we get is 11 verses and our imagination to put this together, okay? So here's what we're going to do throughout this series. We're going to ask 2 major questions, and the second one, of course, has a couple of questions that sort of fit together in it. Number 1 is, what did Jesus do? Okay, it can't be a sign to something else if we don't even know what he did. What did he do? And then number 2, why? Wow. Why did he do this? There's supposed to be, it's a typo, there's supposed to be a D in front of the IS there. Why did he do this? Why did he do it? Everybody read it correctly until well, no, you didn't. Yeah. Yeah. It used to be wine. So, a couple of weeks ago when we were in Brazil, each of the youth and adult classes, 5 youth and adult classes, were tasked with creating something. It wasn't like a talent show necessarily, but it was a presentation. And my class was tasked with some sort of Bible skit. Okay, we could come up with anything from the Bible, and they offered as we were throwing out suggestions, they came up with certain things, and I'm like, well, yeah, but that won't include everybody. We need something that can include everyone. So they settled on this passage right here. John chapter 2, Jesus turning the water into wine. Everyone got a part in there, and even though we can't hear most of it, if we were to play that video this morning, I think it would go better than what I'm doing right now. What's that? Yeah, their English was actually much better than what I'm doing here this morning. Wow. You know how you type something, you prepare something, you proofread it multiple times, and you still miss your own mistakes, right? Okay? Here it is. I mean, why did I do this? Okay, why did he do it? Why did he do the sign? Why did he do the miracle? We need to ask that question. Remember, the purpose in chapter 20, verse 31 is so that you may believe that he is the Christ, the Son of God, and that in believing you might have life in his name. So why should we believe in him? Okay, if the purpose of the sign was to lead people to belief, to lead us to belief or faith in him in some way, for salvation, and I think, for those of us who do know Jesus as Savior already, for growth as well, okay, there's something for everyone in each of these accounts. Why did he do it, and why should we believe in him because of this sign? Okay? Let's just think through it. Let's just work through the text a little bit, and then we'll come back to these questions, okay? So there are a couple of time markers in the Gospel of John that are really important, okay? And chapter 2 begins with now on the third day. All right, this is a common phrase. It means the day after tomorrow, okay, which is why one of the reasons that we believe that Jesus died on Friday and was raised on Sunday. It was the day after tomorrow, okay? It was the third day, okay? So in chapter 1, if we were to trace through chapter 1, we would find that Jesus has been baptized by John the Baptizer. He has already been sent out into the wilderness, tempted by Satan, and now he comes back into southern Israel, near Jerusalem, near the Jordan River and the Dead Sea and that whole area in the south, okay? And he's going to work his way back north where he's from. He's from Galilee in the north, all right? But he's working down here. And Matthew, Mark, and Luke do not tell us as much about this initial ministry down here in the south as the Gospel of John does. Okay? This is why we cannot read just one of these Gospels. We have to read them together, and then we can put together a much better timeline of where Jesus was, what he did, when, and how the events fit together. Okay? Well, in chapter 1, John sees, and this is, I'm going to say John the Baptizer, okay? John the writer here, John the writer, the apostle, never refers to himself by name in this gospel or in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. The 5 things that John the apostle wrote, the Gospel of John, letters 1, 2, and 3, and the Revelation is the only time he actually mentions his name, okay? So here in this gospel, when he refers to himself, which is not often, but when he does, he refers to himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved. Okay? You know, it seems like it's a little bit, stronger than just, and John, right? The guy Jesus loved as opposed to the rest of you. And what's also interesting is that he never refers to Mary by name. In the gospel, she's always Jesus' mother, Jesus' mother, Jesus' mother, the mother of Jesus. Never Mary, okay? Which is why it shows up this way. So here's the timeline. Jesus comes back out of the wilderness, out of the desert, where he has been tempted by Satan for 40 days. He's tired, he's hungry, he has been nourished at the end by angels, he has proven his character, he's passed all the tests, he is now ready to begin his ministry. He walks back into where the people were milling around John the Baptizer, who is preaching. John sees him, verse 29, this is in chapter 1, John saw Jesus coming toward him and said, "Look! The Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." This is the one. This guy right here is the one about whom I said, "After me comes a man who is greater than I am, because he existed before me." And he talked a little bit about the baptism when he realized who Jesus was. And the next day, verse 35, after John the Baptizer had said that, the next day, John was standing there with 2 of his disciples. A disciple is a follower. John had a group of followers. Jesus did not yet. Gazing at Jesus as he walked by, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." He was doing what he was supposed to do, pointing people to Jesus, right? It was not about John the Baptizer. It was about Jesus. Look, the Lamb of God, 2 days in a row. When John's 2 disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus, exactly like they were supposed to. Jesus turned around and saw them following and said, "What do you want?" I don't think it was that tone, but that was, "What do you want?" But, the way things are going today. And they said, "Rabbi," Hebrew for teacher, "where are you staying?" Jesus said, "Come and see." And they stayed with him that day. And Depending on some of your translations, might say it was about 10 o'clock. It was the 10th hour. Okay, and so it says it was the 10th hour. Some people read that as 10 o'clock in the morning. Some people read it as 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The net translation shows 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, we know one of these guys was Andrew. Andrew was originally a follower of John the Baptist, not a follower of Jesus. He didn't just pop up as a disciple of Jesus. He was already following John. He was already listening. He was already waiting for the Messiah. And when John said, "There he is," Andrew said, "No hard feelings, but I'm going this direction." And John the Baptizer said, "Good, go," because he's the Lamb of God, right? He was the one of the two. The other guy is not mentioned by name. Who do you think maybe that was? Okay, probably John the Apostle. Probably John the Apostle. Okay? Andrew first found his own brother Simon and told him, "We found the Messiah, the Christ." Andrew brought Simon to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas," which is Aramaic. It means Peter. Okay, so now we have Andrew, we have Peter, we have John. These names sound familiar, right? And they're beginning to follow Jesus. On the next day, Jesus wanted to set out for Galilee. It takes a couple of days if you're walking to go from southern Israel up to northern Israel. So now we've got a couple of days. What I'm showing is that there is a week that has happened. By the time we get to chapter 2, we've got several days that are happening. He found Philip. Philip is number 4. Philip goes and finds Nathanael. Nathanael's number 5. Okay? And that finishes chapter 1. So we have Andrew, Peter, John, Philip, Nathanael. And now on the third day, we've already had more than 3. So from the third day after Philip found Nathanael, the day after tomorrow, there's this wedding up in Cana. This is probably why Jesus wanted to get up there. Cana is in Galilee. It's about 8 or 9 miles from Nazareth, which is where Jesus grew up. It's where Mary still lived. And so, it's a morning's walk, okay, but it's close enough where you have family, you have friends. Jesus probably grew up with some of these people. It could have been a family wedding. Could have been close friends because Jesus' mother was invited. And Jesus and his disciples were invited. Not just Jesus, and he brought along extra people, and that's why they ran out of wine. Okay? It's not like Jesus had a +1 and he brought +5. Okay? They were all invited. Why? Because they're from that area. Okay, we find out that Andrew and Peter, James and John were from not too far away. Philip and Nathanael, not too far away. They all knew each other. Okay, this is not that Jesus walks by and all of a sudden these people who have never heard of him or seen him before all of a sudden just attach themselves. They knew him. I happen to think that James and John were Jesus' cousins. I think there's some family relation there as well. Okay? And when John the Baptizer said, "That's the guy that I've been talking about," they wanted to find out more. So they attached themselves to Jesus, but they also were invited to this wedding. Okay? We also find verse 5, we're in chapter 2 now, the mother told the servants, "Whatever he tells you, do it." Why was Mary involved? They have no wine. Maybe because she was just that type of person and had to be involved with everything. We know people like that. I don't know. I've never met her. I don't want to, give her a bad name. But somehow, think about this. She was invited. Jesus was invited. His disciples were invited. Were friends, were family, whatever. They ran out of wine. And Jesus' mother, Mary, was the one who, I don't know if she was like in charge of catering or what was going on, but she was the one who decided, we've got to get this fixed, and Jesus is the one to do it. Now, what was she expecting? She wasn't expecting water into wine or wine into water. She wasn't expecting a miracle. Jesus had never done a miracle. This is the first of his signs. This is the first miracle. He'd never done a miracle. It's not like he, had this habit of, creating drinks when they ran out. Okay, this wasn't normal. We don't know what she was expecting. Obviously she knew who he was. Maybe she thought, you haven't started your ministry yet, and I'm going to help push you along, give you a platform to do this. I don't know what she was thinking. All I know is that at this point, she thought she needed to solve the issue, and she trusted that Jesus could do it. Whatever. Did she mean go back home and grab some more? I don't know. Run down to the store, buy some. I don't know. But she trusted that Jesus could take care of it, whatever the situation was. Okay? One writer put it this way: she did not know what he would do, but she knew that he would do the right thing. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? That's faith, by the way, isn't it? When we talk about faith in God, trusting God, this isn't salvation. This is like they ran out of wine. But she trusted that whatever he decided to do, whoever he delegated it to, whatever he said, he would be right. And I think that's a good thing. Verse 4, Jesus replied to her, "Woman, why are you saying this to me?" Literally, the phrase in John's Greek text here is, what is it to me and to you? What is it to me and to you? Okay, that's the literal, it's sort of an idiom. It's actually, that phrase shows up a couple of times in the New Testament. Surprisingly, do you remember the account when Jesus goes across the lake and he runs into these two demon-possessed men in the graveyard? Okay, and before he casts out these demons, the demons see him, they know who he is, and they ask him a question. You know what that question was? What is it to me and to you? Like word for word, the exact same thing. What business do you have here? What business do we have with each other? What's going on? Why are you here? Why are you saying this to me? Why are you getting involved? That's what the phrase means. And the demons were asking Jesus, hold on a second. It's not time for us to be, punished yet. Why are you getting involved? Why are you here? Jesus had almost the same expression here. My time is not yet come. It's not time for me to show who I am, for me to fulfill my work. Okay, which helps us think that maybe Mary is trying to push him along, right? Okay, go ahead and do your thing now. Okay, you're God. We know this, right? And Jesus said, listen, it's not my time. It's not time yet, which shows up in the Gospel of John a lot. It's not my time. It's not my time. It's not my time. It's not my time. My time has come. And all of a sudden, everything changes in the Gospel of John, okay? It's not my time. Why are you telling me this? Why are you getting me involved? You can paraphrase it. You can any way you want to. Okay, just think of how you would say it. What does this have to do with you and me? Why are you getting involved? Why are you getting me involved? What do you expect from me? Lots of different ways to think, to imagine. Like I said, we get 11 verses in our imagination. Okay. My time, my hour, my moment has not yet come. It's not time yet. And this, like I said, this is an important phrase in John because this reminds us, and we see this in John more than Matthew, Mark, and Luke, although it's there. This is part of John's, his agenda as he's writing out this narrative, this account of Jesus' life. And he's selectively choosing which things he thinks are the most important to lead us to faith in Jesus, for salvation and for life. He shows us that Jesus is not just flying by the seat of his pants, right? Jesus is not just, well, I guess I'll do this over here and this over here and this over here. Jesus had an agenda. And in fact, we'll hear from Jesus throughout this gospel several times. I don't even have an agenda. I follow the Father's agenda. I say what he tells me to say. I do what he tells me to do. I'm not just out here doing it. And we see him starting this right here. He was moving toward his hour. And I don't want to put words in Jesus' mouth. I don't want to give him a tone that he didn't have. But saving his family or friends from embarrassment because they ran out of wine was not his purpose on this planet. Okay? A lot of people, focus on this, woman. It's not as nasty as it comes across in American English now, right? It's actually, he uses the same term when he's on the cross. And he looks at the Apostle John and he says, woman, there's your son. Son, there's your mother. Man, there's your mother. He uses it as a term of endearment. So I think of the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10. We have Mary and Martha, and Mary is sitting there listening to Jesus, and Martha is all just like, every time the timer goes off in the kitchen, she's running back to pull something out of the oven. She wants to sit and listen, but she kept getting pulled away. Jesus said, you keep being distracted by all these other little things, right? And she's like, Jesus, just have her help me. If she would help me, then, And I hear Jesus sort of chuckling, not harshly, not Martha, sit down and shut up, that type of thing. They're just sort of chuckling with this, Martha, come on. We don't need all this. We don't need all this. Come sit down, spend time with me. I hear that same gentleness, I hear that same compassion when he says, woman, why are we getting involved here? This is not why I'm here. Her response? Okay, whatever he says, do it. I'm not sure whether that is, I didn't get what you're talking about. I don't know if that's fine, but, I've known Jesus for more than 30 years now, and, he says that, but he's still going to be a nice guy and do something. I don't know what that dynamic was, but she still assumed that he was going to step up and do something. So there were these 6 stone water jars for Jewish ceremonial washing. These were probably outside, okay? So we're talking 120 gallons, 180 gallons, somewhere between these 6, okay? This was a big party. Jewish weddings would typically last at least a week, okay? There was the ceremony, and then there was a week-long feast. Okay, this was a big deal. Sometimes it lasted longer, okay, 2 weeks or more. And they were very particular because you've got to use the restroom and you've got to go do other stuff or whatever. You have to be very clean. You have to be ceremonially clean as well as physically clean. And these stone water jars, these drums, were out there so that they could pour water over their hands. They didn't put their hands in there, and they would draw out and pour all over their hands so that they could be clean, and then they could join the party. Okay? So those were sitting outside. They were there. Jesus said, fill them back up. Why? Because they've been used. Fill them back up. Now, take the water, draw out, and take it to the guy. Could have been a friend, could have been a master of ceremonies, could have been a servant in Greco-Roman, Greek and Roman cultures. Sometimes it was a friend who was at the party. Like, you've done this, right? You're throwing a party, and somebody shows up and like, can you be in charge of ice? Right? Can you just make sure we always have ice? You're not being paid for it. You're just, keeping an eye on the ice for everybody, right? It's not an official thing. That happened. If you don't think that happened back in these days, you're crazy, okay? It happens all the time. It happens in every culture. It could have just been a friend. Hey, could you keep an eye on the wine for us? Make sure, you get more out or whatever. Well, apparently he didn't do a good job because they ran out. We're not going to invite him to watch the wine ever again at our party, right? Because they ran out. I don't know, in our skit that we did in Brazil, the guy who was playing the master of the feast, as soon as he heard they were out of wine, he was on his cell phone. He's like, where can I get more wine? I've got to get more wine, It was great. And I don't know what this guy was doing, but he didn't know. And Mary found out, and Jesus said, fill them back up with water, and then draw some out and take it to the guy. Depending on what church you're in, what group you're in, what commentary you read, what Bible study you're with, who you're talking to. This concept of Jesus making alcohol can turn into a huge thing, okay? A huge thing, all right? Here's what we know. We know that whatever this guy tasted, apparently AD 30 was a really good year, okay? Apparently 30 was a really good year because that's the year that Jesus made it instantaneously, and this guy thought it was the best he had ever had. And in fact, he hunted down the groom and he said, dude, he's like, where did this come from? Everybody puts out the low quality or the high quality stuff first, right? Because usually that's more expensive, you don't have as much. Get everybody drunk, and then you can put out the bad stuff, and nobody knows the difference, right? That's what he said. Things don't change, by the way. Things don't change. That's what he said. The bridegroom never responds in here, okay? In our skit, the bridegroom said, I don't know, which is probably pretty accurate because nobody knew what was going on. And then we ended the skit, okay? That's the whole thing. It's like the story ends there. It's like, what happened? I'd like to know what, where, who did, and we don't know. We have 11 verses in our imagination. That's all we get for this, okay? All we know is that Jesus did indeed take that water and he turned it into wine. And it was really, really good wine. And everybody had a great rest of the party, apparently. Was it unlimited? Were they able to just keep drawing it out? It doesn't say that. Like it happened in Elijah in 1 Kings. Was it limited to that 120 gallons or 180 gallons? I don't know. We have no concept. Because, remember, most of these accounts are going to be short on detail. A couple of them have a lot of detail, but most of these accounts are going to be short on the details, the stuff that we would prefer that they included, because if we had too much detail, we would spend too much time on the event, and it's not about the event. It's about the sign, okay? So, that's the event. What about our questions? Now we go to the questions. These are the things that matter. What did Jesus do? You tell me. What did Jesus do? Yeah. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? I got that one right. He turned, what's that? Yes. Right. It's not like he went over, this wasn't Kool-Aid packets that he's pouring into the thing, This is, this was instantaneous, right? What else did he do? Saved a family embarrassment. Good. He did actually say, because that would have been terrible to invite all these people and then run out of wine. Okay. What else? He what? He obeyed his mother. A mother of adult sons said that. He obeyed his mother. You know what's interesting, though? He created space away from his mother. Okay? This was not, yes, mother, okay, I guess I'll go do something. He pushed back. He created space. He said, hold on a second. And again, I'm not trying to put words in Jesus' mouth, but you're not my boss. Probably didn't say it exactly like that, right? Okay? Your agenda is not my agenda, okay? Yes, he was respectful. Yes, did he obey? Did he choose? Whatever. He was respectful. He did what she was hoping he would do, but at the same time, he created space away from Mary. He created space between Mary and him. She was no longer pushing, driving, controlling him. He was working on a new agenda. This is not my time. Okay? I think that's important. Good. What else? See, there's more than just the water. He revealed his glory. That's right. He revealed his glory. We'll come back to that with the second quote. Why did he do what he did? Nope. Well, I'll put that one up there anyway. He power over nature. He displayed his power over nature. He could control nature, apparently, right? Okay, we'll come back to that one. Here's one. Because I thought that one was next on my slides. I'm using a different system up here, and it's not as good as my old system, obviously. He messed with Jewish tradition. He messed with Jewish tradition. There are these 6 water pots out there that they have one purpose. They're not meant for anything else. And he messed with Jewish tradition. He tampered with the ceremonial cleansing water. Okay? Actually, what's funny is that by making it into alcohol, it became a better sanitizer than the water that was. But this was ritual cleansing, not actual physical cleansing, right? But he messed with the system. His first miracle, he was already pushing back a little bit against the system that was already in place. I'm going to do things on a different agenda, and I'm going to do things in a different way. There's going to be some differences, okay? And they're going to start pushing back against him. Any other thoughts? What did he do? What did he do? He showed the best is yet to come, right? What you have is not what is coming. Good. I can do better. Some people apply that, a lot of theologians and teachers, they'll apply that, they'll make this comparison between Jesus and his kingdom and salvation and the church and all the future things to the Mosaic law and everything, and shows that, especially with the Jewish tradition, I'm throwing that away and I'm doing my own thing. I don't know if I would go that far with it, but he is showing what he has is better. Yeah, right. He showed that whatever is already in existence, and if you want to apply that to the law, if you want to apply that just to wine, what he has is better, right? What he has coming is better. That's good. It's really good. My other one is that he exceeded expectations without showing off. You'll notice in verse 9, the head steward tasted the water that had been turned to wine, not knowing where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew. And then when we come to verse 11, Jesus did this as the first of his miraculous signs in Cana of Galilee. In this way, he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Not everybody at the party, not the guy who drank it, not Jesus' mother, not the servants. The servants knew what had happened. Obviously, the disciples knew what had happened because they saw it, and they believed in him. He was not showing off. He was able to do something. He was able to exceed expectations. We don't know exactly what Mary's expectations were, but I'm sure it wasn't this. He was able to exceed expectations without showing off, without being unnecessarily showy. I think that's important. Okay, all right. And I think that's where you're right. So I think that's where I was going from. It's not like he made a big display about it, like everybody, look at me, I'm going to do this. What he did, he certainly did make it better than was already there. So that's where you're saying he was showing off a little bit. I was coming at it from the perspective is that what he did sort of behind the scenes. Only a couple people knew about it. He didn't make a big deal about it. Nobody else at the party, even the guy who was supposed to make sure that everyone had, everyone make sure your cups are full type thing, didn't even know where it came from. He couldn't pull Jesus up here and say, hey, Jesus, where'd you get this stuff? There was completely behind the scenes. So that's where I was thinking from showing off. But yeah, from your perspective of doing better than, you would think that the family bought the best that they could, right? They thought they had the best. Then Jesus comes by and it's better than anything I've ever had. So, from that perspective, you could say showing off a little bit. Yeah. I see where you're coming from. But nobody saw him, which was my, not many people, right? Yeah. And again, it's about the sign. It's not about the event itself. Tina, did you have? Right. Yep. Yeah. Right. Right. Yep. Because the purpose, right? Each one had a purpose. And if the purpose was for a lot of people or for... Yep. That's good. It's one of the questions that we have to ask, and not just in John, but of all the miracles. And by the way, this is true in Acts too, when we see the apostles doing miracles. When we look through the Old Testament and the prophets were doing miracles. Why did that happen at that moment to that group, big group, small group, whatever? Why did it happen at that moment? And that really brings us to the question, why? Why did he do it? Why? See, that one says it. Why did he do it? Why should we believe in him? Okay? A couple of thoughts here as we wrap up. Here's my first one. He solidified his first disciples. Remember, he's only got about maybe 5 or 6 disciples at this point. Okay, we named off 5 if John ran and grabbed his brother James. It doesn't say because it was close by. He has only 5 or 6. He does not have the whole team yet. But he needed to solidify that small group as he's building his team. Okay? And so I think that was really important that he did this small thing. It was not for the party. It was not for his friends. It was not for the family. Yes, they were the beneficiaries of it. But the purpose was actually for his disciples. I need to show you something. Okay? The miracle was always about authenticating or proving something. And Jesus, even though it wasn't his time, even though it wasn't going to be this big thing, this is not the cross, this is not the resurrection, I can use this moment to prove something, to show my disciples something, and to solidify this core as we work forward, even before he had his whole team together. We already talked about this. He proved his power over nature. Remember that these signs are recorded. Jesus did these signs so that you may believe that he is the Christ, the Son of God. Okay, not just the Savior, but he is deity. He is God. He is the one who has power over nature. Okay, C.S. Lewis said, where did I put it? There we go. C.S. Lewis said God turns water into wine every year through the growth and fermentation process and everything. Jesus cut it short, right? Jesus he made it instantaneous. He cut the process short. Why bring a bottle of wine to the party when you can, make 120 gallons? It's Jesus took something that already happens. He took the system, he took nature, and he shortened the process. This doesn't make it any less miraculous, but this was the first one. This wasn't the last one. He's building up, and we'll see each one builds up a little bit more. He was showing his power over nature. And as we already noted, he just spoke. He didn't stir it. He didn't touch it. He didn't have to put anything in it. This was not a magic trick. He didn't even say, let there be wine, right? Genesis chapter 1. He just said, fill the pots with water. They filled it, and it was just... Now, did it turn into wine as they drew it out? Was there 120 gallons sitting there? We have no idea. We have 11 verses in our imagination, right? We don't know. We have a lot of questions that can't be answered. What we know is that what he did, whenever he did it, it was really, really good. He proved his power over nature. And finally, he showed compassion, and he helped a friend when he had no obligation to do so. He didn't have to do anything here. He could have said, what does this have to do with you and me? And left it there. But he helped a friend. But the purpose was about the disciples here. In this way, he revealed his glory. Glory has a couple of different meanings depending on the context. Most of the time we think of glory as like, oh, right? You know, the shining, the glowing, you know, that sort of thing. That didn't happen here. The wine didn't glow. Jesus didn't glow, you know, whatever. It's interesting. It comes from this is in the New Testament, this is the translation of an Old Testament word, kavod, that means weighty or heavy. The glory of God is the weight, the gravitas is a really good word. The gravitas of God. Okay? Not flippant, not just lighthearted. It doesn't mean you can't laugh or have a joke or whatever, but just the weightiness of God's character. Jesus here proved that he was more than he seemed. They don't know everything about him yet. In fact, we will see that they will still ask questions. Well, who is this guy? But at this moment, at this time, his disciples looked at him and said, this guy is more than we thought. He is more than he looks. There is a gravitas, there is a weight, there is a glory here, there is a fame, there is a reputation, there is power, there is something here that is not as obvious as we thought. And it does not say that they believed in him for the rest of their lives and everything was perfect. But at that moment, their faith grew. And it will continue to grow as we work our way through this gospel. So here's my question. Whether you know Jesus as your Savior or not, we haven't gotten to the resurrection. We believe in that. Jesus is the only one who can forgive us, who can save us. But in this moment, today, whatever you're going through, whatever your thing is, here's the question. Can you believe in him? The word believe or faith, have faith or trust, it all means the same thing. Can you right now, like Mary, like the disciples, can you say, whatever the situation I am right now, I can trust that whatever you do, you're going to do it right? I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know what you're going to do, God. I don't know how you're going to do this. I don't know how you're going to handle this. I have no idea. I have a hard time even setting expectations, but I am willing to trust you to blow me away in whatever it is that you choose to do, and I will trust that you can do it right. That's what this sign is asking for. That's what this miracle is asking us for. Whatever the situation, whatever the embarrassment, whatever the thing is, Jesus, I trust that you can do it and that you're going to do it right and you're going to blow me away with how you do it. That's the challenge today. That's what Jesus is asking us for in this passage. Let's pray together. I hope that's helpful to you. I hope that's something that you can walk away with and look at the next few days, look at your life this week and say, all right, whatever it is, I guess I'm just going to have to trust you for it.